You ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. We are here to welcome you today to the 9th Congressional District as we do Slavery Remembrance Day 2024. I am partial, but the 9th Congressional District is the greatest district across the country. Yes. Being led by our Honorable Congressman Al Green, we are happy to see everyone here today as we celebrate his legislative agenda and celebrate this day. At this time, I'm going to call up the Reverend Dr. Max Miller to come and lead us in invocation for the day. Again, everyone looks wonderful. We are really happy to have you here. For those that attended last year, we are excited to have you back. For those newcomers, sit back, enjoy your breakfast, and be prepared. So, without further ado, Dr. Max Miller. Thank
you. As always, to God be the glory for all the things he has done. Let me say that again. I say, to God be the glory for all the things he has done. I've been informed that whenever we talk about God getting the glory, that folk ought to make sure that they let their left hand meet their right hand. Amen. Prior to this invocation, the Congressman has asked that we would say something in about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. I quite often say at the church, it's one thing when the hunter has the gun, it's something different when the rabbit has the gun. I'm normally on the side of telling people 2 minutes and that's enough. And now I stand with 1.25 minutes left. Amen. This day should not only be a day of reflection about what's on our plates, but it should be a day of reflection what has happened in our past. It's a day of not just fellowship, but it's a day of remembering from whence we've come. And the reason why we want to remember is because you never know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. So as I think about this day, this bill that was passed, this time while we're here at this special occasion, we'll never forget it because it's our history. No matter what you take out of books, no matter what you take out of place, we don't have to read about it. We've lived about it. Amen. It is earlier this week we were in Dallas, Texas, where the ball was dropped. And a man of color, Dr. S.M. Wright, his name was erroneously removed from a freeway that had been there some 10 years. The city and TxDOT got together by a way of ministers all over the state coming together. The decision was unanimous to put it back because the city and TxDOT says we want to right the wrong that has been done. But I'm looking at where we are now, that even with this day and where we are in life, and there are some people that want to wrong the right that has already been done. And we want to let them know today that it's too late to close the gate once the horse and the cattle are in the pasture. We've been out of the gate now, and it's too late to put us back in. I'll have to bring a scripture in. Isaiah 54:17 tells us, no weapon formed against us shall prosper. So let's, from this day forward, remember, reflect, respect, but keep standing for what is right. God bless you and God keep you. Let us bow. Lord, how we thank you. We thank you for being both God and good to us. We thank you, Master, for not only being God, but showing us that your track record is impeccable. And Master, before we ask you for anything, we have to daily thank you for everything. Whatever we needed, Master, you've been there. You may not have come when we wanted you to, but you've always been right on time. So, Lord, we thank you because not only do you show up on time, but you leave evidence that you've been there. So, God, we come now with our heads bowed to thank you again and ask you that to bless this day, a day that Congressman Al Green and those that are here, that are in the key positions to get us to this point, didn't bring us here just for a breakfast, but they brought us here for a movement that every day and every year that we'll remember. So, God, we thank you again. Bless each and every one of us individually. And please, sir, throw your loving arms around us collectively. We are people that stand. We are people on the move. Thank God that you put us where you want us to be. Because, Master, I close this prayer by thanking you because I found out the other day that you give your hardest tests to your best students. We are A students today because you've been so good to us. And we realize that if you don't do anything else, you've already done enough. We ask you to hear these scattered remarks of this prayer in the real, ready, reliable name of he who died but yet rose, even Jesus the Christ. We ask it all. Amen.
Thank you again. I would be remiss. Last year, the crowd was so active, I had to threaten to sing a song to get everyone to quiet down. And so this year, it's a pleasure. I need to introduce myself. My name is George Anderson, and I am a proud member, and I live and reside and work and worship in the 9th Congressional District. I am the Chief Operating Officer of the Fountain of Praise, so I'm here today to serve my congressman, and I'd like to just take personal privilege to acknowledge my pastor, Dr. Remus Wright, and co-pastor Mia Wright in their absence. We again are happy to support the congressman in his initiatives, and we're going to have everyone, if you will, to stand as we do the Pledge of Allegiance. And in your own way of respect and deference of your choosing, we'll start. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, and liberty with justice for all. Great, thank you. I didn't expect that music. We will also, there will be a presentation on the screen and with the music to do the Negro National Anthem. So please stand as we sing this, do this remarkable song. I won't lead you in this. We'll let the audio visual do that part. And at this time, the audiovisual will present the Negro National Anthem. Great, thank you. Great. Again, we are honored to have you as the community here, and I would like for all the elected officials to please stand so that we may note your presence. Any elected official in the House, please stand. At this time, I'd like to bring to the stage the Fort Bend County Judge, K.P. George.
Good morning, everyone. It is absolutely an honor and privilege to stand in front of you and say a few words. Congressman Al Green, thank you so much for your vision. And I just wanted to say, a person of Indian origin and first person of color elected to Fort Bend County Judge's office. And I just wanted to say, I stand on your forefathers' shoulder and their struggles and their challenges and the triumphs. We are enjoying it. It is important to learn history so that we don't make the same mistake we made. So welcome everyone, and thank you once again. This is something important. We remember our history, and welcome and greetings from Fort Bend County. Thank you all.
We have a list of a few others we'd like to bring to the podium at this time. Our City of Houston Controller, a great elected official, Chris Hollins.
Good morning, faithful. It's an honor to be here with you today. I'd like to extend, on behalf of the City of Houston, greetings to you all, and thank you to Congressman Al Green for bringing us together on this occasion. We know that those who do not learn from their history are doomed to repeat it. And we also know that we are living in a state today that by law is banning books that memorialize the history of our people. And so as our people have had to do time and time again, we rely on the federal government. We rely on members of the House of Representatives to bring things like Slavery Remembrance Day. And I know that whether we have a book or not, we stand here today as a living testimony of the diligence, of the perseverance, of the courage, of the resilience of a people that toiled for years and years and years under unimaginable suffering. And so we will not let their memory be in vain. We will not let their memory slip away, and we are grateful to Congressman Al Green for making sure that on the national stage, the work of our people to build this country for free, which you will talk about a little bit later, Congressman, is remembered and recalled with the solemnity and the seriousness that it deserves. So again, thank you, and greetings on behalf of the City of Houston.
Great. Let's give it up again for Chris Hollins. This next young lady, I may get in a little trouble, but she has established her own, but I know her as the daughter of Judge Clouser, who is a great friend and mentor. And so at this time, I'd like to bring up Lynn Clouser, who is Missouri City Mayor Pro Tem. Lynn Clouser.
Thank you so very much. Today I stand here on behalf of our wonderful mayor. I'm actually the better looking version of our mayor, Mayor Robin Ellicat in Missouri City. Congressman Al Green. Y'all, let's give Congressman Al Green a hand. He is the driving force of us gathering today and remembering today. Today is not just a day of remembrance, it's a call to action. I want to say, let us commit to building a future that honors the sacrifices of those who came before us, who suffered for justice, equality, and unity in our communities. May their spirits guide us as we continue the work of building a more just and equitable world. Congressman, the City of Missouri City, we appreciate you. And we thank you for allowing us to gather to remember those who suffered before us. We have submitted a proclamation to your office to commemorate this day. Again, we thank you for being here, and thank you, Congressman Al Green, for keeping the memory of those who went before us alive. Thank you.
This time, I'd like to acknowledge and bring to the stage Alice Chin, who I've had the pleasure of working with for a number of years, first as a staff member for Congressman Al Green. And she is now the City Council member and Mayor Pro Tem for the City of Stafford. Alice Chin.
Good morning, Congressman Green, distinguished guests, my brother, my sister. My name is Alice Chen. You heard the gentleman say, I worked for Congressman Al Green as a staff for 12 years. I learned from the best. Congressman Green is my role model, my mentor, and today I'm the Mayor Pro Tem of City of Stafford. I want to share you today, it's Congressman, this is the third year he hosts the Slavery Remembrance Day. He wants all of us remember the rich culture, the history, the suffer, the pain. And guess what? As an Asian American woman, I am also go through whatever the pain, the suffer, the discrimination, the injustice, I understand. So Congressman tirelessly doing this want us to remember, all of us, we need to celebrate our resilience. We need to celebrate who define us. Also, we need to celebrate unity together. Unity together. We must remember. We must remember. Thank you.
This next person needs no introduction, but I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege just to acknowledge my mayor. And for the record, let me say that he's one of the greatest mayors in the history of Houston. Not only did he navigate the city through some very trying times, through some trying national or natural disasters, but he also dealt with fiscal issues that were facing the city. I'd like to remember him for his visionary leadership, and he has left us with an inheritance of a great city. His vision is still alive. And so without further ado, again, personal privilege, I'd like to welcome my fraternity brother and my mayor, Sylvester Turner.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Let me start off by again thanking the Honorable Al Green. Give it up to Al Green. Come on, as he would say, that was a small town thank you. Give him a Texas thank you to Congressman Al Green. Let me quickly say things don't just happen on their own. It takes vision and it takes leadership. Congressman Green, let me again thank you for causing all of us to remember. George talked about me being mayor, but let me tell you, I stand and we stand on the shoulders of more than 15 million people who died on the transatlantic slave trade. 15 million. 400 years of slavery. So irrespective of whatever accolades people may bestow on us today, there was a huge sacrifice that was made. We celebrate Juneteenth for the day that we got the word that we were free. But we have to remember the 15 million who died, not coming voluntarily, but being brought against their will. We have to remember those kids who were taken away from their parents, mothers and children taken away from their husbands, husbands taken away from their wives and their children. And we have to remember that we were not treated as people, we were treated as property. But thanks be to God, we are here today, and we are here to stay. And so for all of the elected officials that are here, all the precinct judges, the business owners, you name it, we are a resilient people. And as I always say in closing, and we are not through yet. We're here, and we are here to stay. We're not trying to make America great again. We are simply saying we've already made it great, but you have not recognized our greatness. And so today we recognize our greatness. Thank you, Congressman Green, for all you've done.
And I'm ready to open the doors of the church. Yes. Again, a phenomenal mayor. And let me say today that I am humbled to bring this next great man to the stage. I'll take a moment of personal privilege. He is my fraternity brother. He is a great mentor. He is a great leader. For those of you who don't know, we are represented in the 9th District by a phenomenal man. If you want to go down to just the dollars and cents, he's bought over $100 million worth of funding to the 9th Congressional District. And he's going to share his conscious agenda with you, but I just want to note that I admire this man because he is a pillar of integrity. He's taught me in everything that I do to look at the implications and make sure that I'm operating with integrity and above reproach. And he leads us in that way. I would also like to say that our Congressman Al Green is a brave man. When no one else would challenge the then president, he was the first to initiate articles of impeachment. When no one else will stand up for doing the right thing, whether it's for the African American community, the Asian community, the Latina community, we can always count on Congressman Al Green to take the forefront and to lead us. And I am most excited, too, that while some have been a little afraid to speak up with what's going on in the Gaza Strip, our congressman has led the discussion to say we must do the right thing. So without further ado, I would like to bring before you a great man who has the vision to create this whole breakfast, but not just this breakfast, a significant legislative agenda. One heaven of a man, our Congressman Al Green.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Our theme, bringing the gifts our ancestors gave. We are the dream and hope of the enslaved. I'd like to talk to you for just a moment, if I may, with the topic at heart. What do you do when hope is your plan? What do you do when you are stolen from your land, your home, and placed in the belly of a ship, and it is not against the law to kidnap and to place you into human bondage, to place you in that which we have deemed the slave trade? What do you do when there's no law against doing this to you and hope is your only plan? What do you do when you arrive in a place that you've never been, where there's no one that you know, when the people are cruel, when you have only hope to cling to, when hope is your plan? What do you do? What do you do when you find yourself on the auction block and your child goes in one direction and you go in the next direction, and it's not against the law to separate families, and hope is your only plan? What do you do when the Supreme Court of this country proclaimed that there is no law requiring a white man to respect the rights of black people at that time? Judge Taney, what do you do? What do you do when hope is your plan? When hope is your plan, what you do is impregnate that hope with a dream that one day your offsprings, your children's children's children will walk this country as a free people, that they will take a stand, that they will make a difference in the lives of people, and that they won't forget you and the suffering that you endured, that they will become the people who will make this country realize that they were significant and that they must be respected. That's what you do. That dream is something that we have to remember and respect, because it's that dream that was impregnated in hope that has become a reality. Friends, we are the dream that they hope for. It is now up to us to make sure our ancestors are respected, to make sure that what was done for the Confederate soldiers in 1956 when they were given a Congressional Gold Medal, to make sure that our ancestors are treated similarly. It is time for the black people who suffered for 246 years to receive at least a Congressional Gold Medal for that suffering. It is time. But that's not enough. We have placed before the Congress legislation to acquire this. But that's not enough. We believe that if others who have not suffered nearly as much can receive a Presidential Medal of Freedom, then we believe that the President of the United States of America should accord a Congressional Medal of Freedom to those who suffered the indignation and humiliation of slavery, who suffered and had their families separated. It's time for the President of the United States to award a Presidential Medal of Freedom to the enslaved. But that's not enough. We have legislation pending before the Congress asking for a Department of Reconciliation. A Department of Reconciliation with a Secretary of Reconciliation. A secretary whose job it is to wake up every morning and resolve and reconcile the many differences that we have suffered over the ages in this country. They need to be reconciled. It is time for us to have a Department of Reconciliation with a budget that is indexed, that means tied, indexed to the Defense Department's budget. Why the Defense Department? Because if it's indexed to the Defense Department's budget, we know it will always be funded. And we want it to be funded so that we can have within that department commissions. And there ought to be a commission to deal with slavery, with the enslaved. And that commission ought to help us establish the notion that there must be more than a thank you, which we've never actually received to the extent that we should have. But there has to be more than a thank you. There has to be, for those who suffered for 246 years, who laid the economic foundation for this country, who are the economic foundation of mothers and fathers of this country, there must be some recompense. There must be something more than thank you. There has to be some emolument, something that can make a difference in the lives of the people who are suffering today. We call it reparations. I support a Department of Reconciliation to deal with reparations for the enslaved people who have not received the justice that they've richly earned and deserved. It's time for the United States of America to pay for the injuries, the suffering, the harm, the many years of toil, all of the tears that have been shed. It's time for the United States of America to have reparations for all of those who are the descendants of the enslaved. Now is the time. Now is the time. We are the people. We are the dream that they had. We have to make this happen. It won't happen because we simply ask. We've got to demand that the United States of America live up to the credo and that Pledge of Allegiance that we had earlier. Liberty and justice for all. That includes them. It's time to live up to those words in the Declaration of Independence. All persons created equal, endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our pursuit of happiness requires that we receive more than a thank you for the suffering of our ancestors. It requires that we receive an emolument. That is a payment. That is something that we all should get. And for those who say that they don't want an emolument, that they don't want a payment, I'll take your share. I have no problems with it. I'm looking for it. I don't want 40 acres and a mule. I want 80 acres and a Mustang with a V8 engine. I want some justice. The dream that was impregnated in hope is alive, and we are that dream. But doing this is just not enough. There's something else that we have to do. We have to demand respect. People must respect us. And we are being disrespected when we have in Washington, D.C., a building bearing the name of Richard Russell, a self-proclaimed white supremacist who fought anti-lynching legislation, who fought against civil rights legislation, who co-authored the Southern Manifesto. It's time for us to assemble. It's time for us to get on buses, to get on planes, to get in cars, to take any means of transportation available to us and go to Washington, D.C. and surround the Richard Russell Senate office building and demand that that name come off of that building. It's time to take it off. The Senate Richard Russell building is a symbol of national shame, and it's a shame that we haven't gone there to demand that it be removed. It's us that will get it done. Shall we do it? Shall we go to Washington, D.C.? Shall we demand that the name come off the building? Shall we be willing to go to jail to suffer the consequences necessary to let the world know that we must be respected? Let's move to Washington, D.C. Let's have the name removed, and let's select another name more suitable for my tax dollars and yours. And now, friends, having said all these things, I have to get that off my chest. We have two dynamic persons who are going to follow, but first we have a bit more business to take care of. I promised our speaker that we would make sure he makes his plane, and I have gone longer than I should have, and others have been terse and pithy with their comments, so I appreciate you. But I have to do a couple of things quickly. First thing I have to do is let you know that we have 20 police officers here today. 20 police officers. And we want to thank them. Let's give them a hand for what they've done. We are protected by Houston's finest. Mayor Turner hired a good many of them. I know they're good. Also today, there's something else that I must do. I have to acknowledge my staff. So staff, would you please stand? Give them a hand, please. And I have to acknowledge the men of the Masonic Order. If you are a member of the Masonic Order, if you're a Mason, would you stand, please? Give them a hand, please. We've acknowledged elected officials, but I haven't. Elected officials, please stand, please. One more time. Thank you for that. And I have to do this. I promise I'm going to the ceremony in just a moment, but I have to say this. We, as has been said by many, did not get here by ourselves. And this is important to note because I believe that our ancestors who understood that there was an underground railroad and that Aminta Ross, you know her as Harriet Tubman, that Harriet Tubman was one of the conductors, but there were also persons of different ancestries who were helping with that Underground Railroad. Many of them were of a different hue, and they helped us to get out of bondage. I think we have to help others. I really believe this in my heart. We have to help others. We suffered, as you know, with our townships being bombed. There's litigation trying to make its way through the courts now for what happened in Greenville and other places. So I'm going to mention something now that you have to hear because there is suffering. Friends, there is suffering in Gaza. There is suffering. We who have suffered, cannot stand idly by and watch those babies being bombed with bombs that you are paying for. Our tax dollars should not be used to kill any more babies. It's time to end this war. There is suffering. There is suffering now on the West Bank. The West Bank was supposed to be land set aside for a Palestinian state. I challenge you, I challenge all of you, use your Google. See if you can find a place called Palestine. See if there's a map that shows a place called Palestine. When my good friends, my Israeli brothers and sisters arrived, they arrived at a place called Palestine. I'm not saying there shouldn't be a home for them. There must be a home for the Israelis, but there also must be a home for the Palestinians. It's time for us who have suffered to help the Palestinians find a place and have a place to call home. I know that some of us are afraid to speak up. We are afraid. We are afraid because we have seen the consequences of standing for truth, standing for justice. Our ancestors would not look upon us kindly for being afraid after they've suffered for 246 years. So let's do this. Let's rethink our position. Those who may have a different position, rethink your position if you would. I'll rethink mine. But I will tell you this. I want a two-state solution. I want a state for Israelis, and I want a state for Palestinians. And I want the Netanyahu administration to stop taking the land that has been set aside in 1948 for the Palestinians. I want that to cease. And I want you to help me to help them. I want you to believe that this is a part of our mission and a part of our destiny. We have a duty, responsibility, and an obligation to not only defend and ask for justice for our friends and our neighbors, but also for our ancestors, but also for those persons who are in distant places who suffer too. So I ask you now, as my final comment before I go through what has to be done, and that is the Remembrance Day program, I ask you now, will you join me in standing up against AIPAC? AIPAC is the organization. AIPAC is the organization that spent $25 million to remove a person from office who had an opinion different from theirs. I fear not AIPAC. What I fear is our lack of a spine to deal with AIPAC. Will you stand with me? Will you take a stand here and now? Will you let the world know that we are not afraid of AIPAC? Will you let the world know that we're going to stand up for those Palestinians just as people stood up for us? Will you be the kind of people that our ancestors prayed and hoped that we would be when they had those dreams? That may cost me my congressional seat. But you know what? I will leave knowing that I said it. And I'll feel better about myself for having said it. Now, friends, for just the next few minutes, let's do this quickly. We have a remembrance program that is absolutely always a part of this program. And what I'd like for you to do, those who can, if you would stand and join me by, if you desire to do so, placing your hand over your heart. And you only do this so as to indicate your heartfelt sorrow for the millions who have suffered the horrors of slavery. And only if you can stand and if you choose to do this, should you do it. And with your hand over your heart and your desire to participate, otherwise, over the next few minutes, we will recall some of the various well-documented aspects of the experiences of America's enslaved. At the end of each of these summarized experiences, I will say the words "we must," and you will say "always remember." So whenever you hear me say "we must," you will say "always remember." Very good. Let's begin. To prevent the evils of slavery from being repeated, we must always remember. To communicate and commemorate the suffering and the lives lost because of slavery, we must always remember. for the first 20 enslaved Africans who arrived at the British colonies at near what we now call Point Comfort, in Norfolk, Virginia. We must always remember. And for the 12 million humans from all walks of life whose lives were stolen from them when they were kidnapped from Africa and forced into slavery, we must always remember. For the Africans forced into slavery by other Africans, we must for the approximately 2 million human beings who suffered the deadly Middle Passage and did not survive the horrific voyage to America, we must. For the men, women, and children on slave ships, many of whom were kept naked, packed close together, with many shackled and chained, we must. For the enslaved human beings who often worked from sunup to sundown, 6 to 7 days a week, often without food, we must. For the mothers and fathers who were separated from their children and sold on the auction blocks, we must. For the liberators, such as Nat Turner, who fought to free enslaved people, who lost their lives in the fight for freedom and justice, we must. For the tens of thousands of enslaved people who risked their lives in search of freedom on the Underground Railroad, we must. For the liberators such as Harriet Tubman, who escaped slavery and dedicated her life to returning to the South no less than 13 times, liberating enslaved men, women, and children, we must. For the liberators such as John Brown, President Abraham Lincoln, and countless others, all of whom were of many hues, we must. To commemorate the centuries of suffering, the years of tears shed, the history of hearts broken, the brutality of blood spilled, and the grieving of lives lost because of slavery, we must. Yet in the spirit of righteous remembrance, imbued with love for our country that hasn't always loved its brothers and sisters of African ancestry, we have to acknowledge that in spite of slavery and despite its invidious offsprings, matched lynchings, black codes, convict leasing, lawful segregation, and institutional racism, African Americans have come a laudably long way. From our arrival on slave ships to our ascension to judgeships, from surviving the deadly Middle Passage to thriving among the masses, from shackled and chains to creating societal change, from sitting in the back of the bus to owning bus companies, from having no house to being residents of the White House, from painfully picking cotton to proudly picking presidents, from adult males being called boy and females being called girl while being disrespected and rightfully now being presented as Mr. President and Madam Vice President. Laudably, the truth be told, although we have come a long way, we still have a long way to go. And in closing, let us resolve that as we forge forward, we will commemorate our past and embrace our destiny, always remembering the hardships of people of our heritage, African heritage, who have endured endured in tandem with the victories won in spite of the seemingly invincible challenges emanating from the insidious and invidious progenies of slavery, that we will remember always that we've come this laudably long way. And through it all, we must, we must, we must. Thank you, my dear brothers and sisters all. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Great. Let's give it up again for our Congressman Al Green. At this time, I'd like to bring up a significant force here in the city of Houston. And I won't go into a long introduction because he really needs no introduction. I like to refer to him as one of the pastors of the city of Houston. And he is going to introduce our keynote speaker who has to make a plane. So at this time, without any delay, let me bring to the stage Bishop James Dixon, my bishop. Yes, sir.
Good morning. God bless you. Thank you so very much. That's the Community of Faith Church standing like that, so you understand what that's about. I am so grateful to God to be here today. Let's just thank God one more time for what Congressman Green just shared with us. His courage, his competence, his compassion, and absolutely his commitment sets him in a different stratosphere amongst leaders, and so we thank God for him. I want to quickly say thank you, Congressman Green, for allowing me to partner with you on this, and all of us are here blessed to partner with you. And I want to be brief because the speaker, preacher, does have a plane to catch. And since my plane was not available to give him private transportation, I need to make sure that he gets to the airport on time for his commercial flight. I want to say today a couple of things about our keynote speaker. He's a friend of mine for many, many years, a partner, a colleague, a brother beloved, a pastor, and all of us pastors. In fact, would all the pastors just quickly stand? All pastors, all quickly, all pastors. Come on, let's praise God for all of these pastors. No, you can do better than that. Praise God for all of the clergy, men and women of the cloth. God bless you. Thank you so very much for being here on today. Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois mentions in his book, The Soul of Black Folk, about the double consciousness that black folk in America have to live with daily. In fact, his great-grandson is with us today, Jeffrey Peck. The great-grandson, Jeff, stand quickly. This is the great-grandson of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois right here in our midst today. Du Bois talks about the dual consciousness that blacks have to live with in America. He talks about that, and Dr. Alvin Poussaint talks about it as well. The fact that we have to live with trying to wrestle with our true self-perception versus the external perception that others have of us. It is the perception that others have whose visions are damaged by supremacy and this whole notion of dominance that causes us to have to see ourselves through their eyes and to see ourselves through our own eyes simultaneously every day. It's why some black folk talk like they're white, because they're trying to live out the manifestation of the external perception that others have of us, and so we seek to make our hair look like theirs. We seek to dress like them. We seek to diminish our own individuality and our own culture because we know that it can be punished by those who don't think it worthy of our self-expression. It's why some of us have now stopped preaching like black preachers, because we want to sound acceptable to those who have defined for us what preaching really looks like. And so in the average black pulpit, you get a message that's a white theology in a black context, which means that we end up continuing to oppress the people who are sitting in our pews. We make them docile to the fact that we will not even stand up for the suffering children in Gaza because we're afraid that the dominant culture would punish us for standing for justice and for truth. Somebody's going to hear me, because I'm about to bring up a preacher today who is prophetic and prolific and who will not be interested in being apologetic for those who need us to be docile and passive. I want to say that the hour we're in now, we need the Dr. Freddie Hayneses of the world, because the MAGA movement is not going away even if Trump does not get elected. I need us to understand that Donald Trump is a symptom, not a cause. The fact of the matter is that there are people who believe what he believes. They were just waiting for somebody to say it. And if you don't get that, you will think that if Donald Trump loses, MAGA loses. No, MAGA will just get madder. And there are school teachers and bankers and lawyers and elected officials who are raising your children in daycares who are part of that movement. And if we don't come alive as a people to hear the prolific prophetic voices like the one you're about to hear, without prophetic voices, we'll be back on the plantation with your BMW and your Gucci watch. I need somebody to stand and get ready to hear this man of God. Y'all stripping now. I came here with an attitude. I got the same attitude that Kamala Harris has. When you woke up that black sister with an intellectual, emotional, and anointed attitude, they woke up the what God sent us is the granddaughter of Harriet and Fannie Lou Hamer, Senator Kamala Harris, and that's why today Congressman Green ought to be celebrated for not bringing us a preacher who's afraid to speak truth, the one who's been speaking truth to power for 40 years at the Friendship West Baptist Church and around this nation. My friend, my brother, he's anointed, he's appointed, he's assigned, and thank God for the liberating message you're about to hear. Dr. Frederick K. Haynes III, receive him now.
Wow. 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 Give it up for that prophet without peer, Houston's own, Texas's own, our community's own Bishop James Dixon. What a gift. What a prophet. What a preacher. What a daring orator. Thank you so much, Bishop Dixon. You may be seated. God bless you. Thank you. Love you. Good to see you. Let me express my appreciation, first of all, to Bishop Dixon for just being that dude. One of the things that I shared with a member of our church who had moved to Houston and was looking for a church and then experienced an injustice. And so I said, well, here's what you do in Houston. If you get in trouble, you pray and then call Bishop Dixon. And so I thank God that we have that kind of prophet in the house, in our time, and we cannot take for granted this kind of courage and this kind of prophetic gift. Thank you so much, Bishop Dixon. Now, one of the things about Bishop Dixon introducing me is that it's kind of jacked up in that now you would rather hear the one who introduced than the one who got introduced. And so it's real jacked up. And so I need y'all to pray for Bishop Dixon that God would forgive him for the extravagant, hyperbolic, eloquent lying that he did, and then pray that God would forgive me, because I love the way he lied on me. So thank you, Bishop, for who you are. I also want to shout out the legend and icon that we are gifted with in this state. We claim him all over, and that is Congressman Al Green. Congressman Al Green continues to bless me and inspire me and let me know that you can get elected and still represent. Because a whole lot of folk get elected and then they get bought and paid for, and they have an amnesia that precludes them from representing those who sent them. Congressman Al Green says, and he said this to me last night, he said, my community hired me to work for them. I was not hired by AIPAC. I was not hired by other folk outside, so I was sent to Washington to represent and work for our people. And I think we ought to appreciatively applaud and acknowledge the fact that this is our congressman, and to use the language of the culture, he represents. Thank you so much, Congressman Al Green, for representing. I love and respect him because he dares to do that which is unpopular, but it's principled. He recognizes that everything that is popular ain't necessarily principled. And so he lives by principles as he represents us. And so for that, we are honored and grateful. And our gathering under this great theme, under this objective of remembering the suffering, of commemorating, as it were, the Ma'afa, some call it the Black Holocaust, that existed in a country espousing the values of liberty and justice for all. And for us to gather in this space, in this state, where we have a governor doing everything in his power to undermine the truth of history in order to justify his agenda of white supremacy as he wipes out diversity, equity, and inclusion in a nation, watch this, of liberty and justice for all. There's something hypocritical about that, Governor, and yet we gather here down the street from Galveston, Texas, where June 19th, 1865, word reached Texas that finally emancipation news had come. And so, Congressman Green, you stand in a rich liberatory tradition of fighting for truth and justice. We honor you, we salute you, and we thank God for you. I got to salute all of my colleagues and clergy who were here. Pastors, thank you so much. Great faith leaders for your presence and for your work. Houston has some of the baddest preachers walking the planet. And so whenever I need inspiration to do something in Dallas, I just tune into what y'all doing in H-Town. So thank you so much for what you're doing. I want to address our theme. We are the hope, we are the dream and the hope of the enslaved. We are the dream and the hope of the enslaved. A viral moment took place this past Thursday on CNN. Professor Michael Eric Dyson could take it no more. As a congresswoman from South Carolina, Nancy Mace continuously mispronounced the name of Madam Vice President Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States of America. Kamala Harris, my sisters and brothers, having achieved all she has achieved, and yet this MAGA congresswoman decides that she's going to repeatedly and intentionally mispronounce the name of Madam Vice President. Michael Eric Dyson, Professor Michael Eric Dyson, Vanderbilt University, then used the opportunity as a teaching moment. In the teaching moment, he says to Congresswoman Nancy Mace, what you don't get when you intentionally mispronounce her name. I know you're a wonderful person, but when you intentionally mispronounce her name, you are bringing about the history and legacy of disregarding and disrespecting black humanity. That's the white history of disrespecting and disregarding black humanity. And at that moment, she again is flunking the test that is being given to her by Professor Michael Eric Dyson, and she responds, oh, you're calling me a racist. Now a hit dog will holler, because he had not called her a racist. All he had done was say, I'm sure you're a wonderful person, but you're missing the history and legacy of white disregard for black humanity. Her only response was, it's disgusting that you're calling me a racist. She was missing the whole point as she doubled down by saying, I will pronounce her name any way that I want to. Now, since she flunked the test, I want to go ahead and share with you that Dyson is a friend of mine. I called him and said, Mr. Professor, would you please help us to understand the
lesson that you were teaching. I downloaded the lesson on my mental computer, and now I'm going to oratorically print y'all a copy of what Dr. Dyson shared with me. Dr. Dyson said that when she was intentionally mispronouncing the name of Madam Vice President, she was othering her as she is not quite fully American. She was saying in essence that she is less than, not equal to, and connected to a history that goes all the way back to the ugliness of enslavement. During enslavement, I think I'll bring to the witness stand one Kunta Kinte, Alex Haley's ancestors. Kunta Kinte is kidnapped from the shores of Mother Africa while he's going through a rites of passage program. He survives the hell and horror of Ma'afa and the Middle Passage. He is sold on an auction block after being separated from his family. He is then sold not as a person to be respected, but as merchandise to be used on a plantation. They give him a name that is contrary to the name he had been given at birth. The name they insisted on giving him is Toby, but check it out. He continues to call himself Kunta Kinte, and they continue to beat him and whip him because they're trying to snatch his name from him. It does not matter the name that his parents gave him. It does not matter the name that the Rites of Passage program unveiled by way of its prophetic meaning. Instead, they are saying, we're going to call you what we want to call you because we do not regard and respect your humanity. We do not regard and respect your history or your identity. And so when a MAGA Republican named Nancy Mace says, I will call this brilliant and beautiful Madam Vice President what I want to call her, it is taking us back to the dark, ugly days of enslavement, and she fails to connect the dots, perhaps intentionally, because again, a hit dog will holler, are you calling me a racist? I didn't call you a racist, but since you said it, we'll go ahead and go along with it. I'm suggesting, my sisters and brothers, that there is a need to connect the dots, and when we connect the dots, we discover that when the truth sets you free, it means a lie will lock you up. If the truth sets you free, that's Jesus right there. Well, if that is correct, the truth will set you free. That means lies lock us up, and that perhaps is what has taken place in this country, because how could a country espousing the values of liberty and justice for all engage in the most brutal, evil expression of dehumanizing slavery in the history of humanity, except there was a lie that the country was built on? Well, I'm simply remixing the brilliant James Baldwin. Baldwin said, when the founders of this country were trying to justify what they were doing and how they were doing it, they looked at the fact that there was a humanity in kidnapped Africans, and yet they were building a country espousing the values of democracy, liberty, and justice. That's a contradiction. How do you justify the contradiction? Baldwin said they justified the contradiction with the big lie. What is the big lie? The big lie is, well, in order to justify their enslavement, we must see them as less than human. And so written into the structure, the Constitution of this country, is what is known as the 3/5 Compromise, where our ancestors were treated brutally and enslaved because they were seen as less than human. And so when Professor Dyson lesson teaches Congresswoman Nancy Mace that this is white disregard for black humanity. It is reaching into the poison wells of a hypocrisy of American democracy that is based on a lie about the humanity of black people. Baldwin then goes on to insightfully insist and interpret, please don't miss this, the lie that was born at the birth of the country continues to haunt us to this very day. Why is it, my brothers and sisters, that one wearing a uniform saying I protect and serve can put his knee in the neck of Houston's George Floyd? He does it because he did not see the humanity of George Floyd. I'm suggesting that racism in the system of this country is always a denial of our humanity, because if the truth sets you free, a lie will lock you up. And with that being the case, we find ourselves gathering here in this day, the third annual Slavery Remembrance in this state, because we recognize the wisdom of Jacob Carruthers, who said, you've heard about homicide and genocide, suicide. This state is practicing historicide. I think y'all will catch that in just a moment. Historicide, where there's a determination to murder our memory, because somehow if they murder our memory, they can erase the guilt of what was done. But just because you engage in historicide, it does not stop the systemic white supremacy that this country has been built on. You didn't get historicide? Well, let me help you with it like this. Not only is there historicide, but understand the wisdom of Carter G. Woodson, who after graduating from Harvard with a PhD, Carter G. Woodson then began to travel the country checking out the educational system. It was then that Carter G. Woodson discovered, and I quote, that there would be no lynching in the country if it did not start in the classroom. Now I'll tie all of this together, because what Carter G. Woodson was saying in the educational system, lynching had already started, because again, we did not respect the humanity of a people who were brought here treated as a fraction, not a whole person. And the crime of colonialism, according to Professor Gray Carr, is that they then put their memories in our minds. And so it's not just what was done to us, but what has happened in us. And when they put their memories in our minds, we internalize oppression, and we see white as right and black get back, and as a consequence, we turn on ourselves. But I'm so glad that right here in H-Town, there's a congressman named Al Green who said what we are going to do, I'm about to shout, is engage in a spirit of Sankofa. Here it is, Sankofa. I borrowed that from the Akan people there in Ghana. Sankofa, it simply is a symbol of a bird that is moving forward by looking back. The bird, watch this, has an egg in its beak that it has pulled from within itself. I hope y'all are grabbing the symbolism. It's moving forward by looking backward. Why do we have Slavery Remembrance Day? Because if we are going to move forward as a people, if we are going to move forward as a nation, we've got to look back in order to move forward. Well, y'all didn't feel that, so you act like I'm not in the Bible. I am a preacher, so you know I'm in the Bible. The Bible lets us know, what is it? Joshua chapter 3 and chapter 4, the people of God are about to cross over into the promised land, but they've got to go through the Jordan. And the book says, God tells Joshua, don't y'all jog through the Jordan. Don't rush through the river, but get 12 men to get some stones in out of the Jordan River, and then you erect a monument on the other side of the river. In the future, your children children are going to ask, what do these stones mean? You let the kids know the same God who made a way back in the day is the same God who can do it right now. In order to move forward, you got to look backward. And so let's move forward by looking backward. What do we do when we look backward? A, we remember. I like that. Let's remember. Remember, I like this, the faith that the dark past has taught us. I borrowed that from James Weldon Johnson, because we have come this far by faith. We've come this far. I like that, Congressman Green, when our only agenda was hope. The only strategy we had was hope. And as a consequence, we have a faith that the dark past has taught us. And so we remember that faith. And when you remember that faith, you can look back in order to move forward. I think it was Henry Mitchell who said the black church at its birth in enslavement, every black preacher made it her or his business to transform their pulpits into a platform for abolition. That meant that the real legacy of the black church, it's not in white evangelicalism that is more white than it is evangelical, but the legacy of the black church is in abolition. It's in liberation. And so we've got to deliver our black pulpits from white theology. And when we deliver them from white theology, we go back to that black carpenter in Galilee, because y'all do know that black carpenter, he was born homeless in Bethlehem. That black carpenter was not just born homeless, but born under a genocide watch. He escapes to hide out in Egypt. He hides in Egypt. He hides in Egypt. How you gonna hide in an Egyptian ghetto with blonde hair and blue eyes? And then he grows up in the hood called Nazareth. Nazareth was so hood, somebody said, can any good thing come out of Nazareth? If NWA was rapping in the day of Jesus, they'd have dropped an album. The album would be called Straight Out of Nazareth. Jesus then moves among those who are on the margins, offering free health care to those with pre-existing conditions. Look at Jesus taking a 2-piece and 5 biscuits and feeding those who are food insecure. Look at Jesus leading a march on Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, and then he goes into the temple and sees those engaged in economic exploitation and pulls a Parliament funkadelic and says, I'm going to turn this mother out. I'm talking about Jesus. We've got to remember the faith that the dark past has taught us. And when we remember the faith the dark past has taught us, we will resist, refuse to accept what is, because we believe in what should be. Oh, I'm preaching. Y'all just not getting this thing. We resist. Slavery Remembrance Day reminds us that our ancestors were not slaves, they were enslaved. They were kidnapped as free persons who were dignified, brought to these shores against their will, and they never ever assented to enslavement. And so they sang, I'm about to shout, and before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my God and be free. Y'all didn't shout. I'm gonna look over here. They had shackles on their feet, chains on their hands, on a plantation, but they said, and before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave. Slavery does not define who I am. Before I be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my God and be free. I was in Ghana, 1619, the year of return. Went to a slave castle and saw these words. I give them to you. There was a sale for those rebellious captives. And in that sale, the rebellious captives wrote these words. I'm about to shout. We are the children of those who refuse to die. Remember, resist, and here it is, and I'm done. Rise to repair and reconstruct. Rise, rise. I love the line of our theme. We are the hope, or the dream and the hope of the enslaved. Because you know it comes from Maya Angelou. Maya's poem, And Still I Rise. I'm done, and still I rise. That's our challenge in 24, and that is to continue to rise. If we are their dream and their hope, it means we rise. Rise to what? We rise to repair what was broken. What am I saying? This country will not experience wholeness until it repairs what it has broken in the moral contract with those of us who are descendants of Mother Africa. Until you repair what was broken, there was something structured in the moral universe by the God of the universe that says if you don't repent for what you've done, if you don't repair what you broke, you will not have reconciliation and wholeness. And so we can't have liberty and justice for all until they repair what has been broken. I'm calling for reparations. Rise for our reparations. And we rise. I'm done. Because we're going to fight back. We're going to fight back. This is August, and I love August because, 60 years ago next year, in August, the voting rights bill was passed. But August 5th this year was the first anniversary. I call it chairversary. Chairversary. And y'all don't know it, but it went viral last August 5th of 2023. In Montgomery, at the site Montgomery River, where enslaved Africans were brought on that river and sold into evil enslavement. And y'all, last year, at that same river, G-Mac Cash puts it like this, since y'all not getting it. Bro told y'all to move just doing his job, but you had to jump him. Now we got a problem. And this brother told these white dudes who were drunk evidently, you got to move your boat for the ferry. And do you know they jumped him? And when they jumped him, he threw up the hat signal. The hat, you've heard the bat signal. He threw up the hat signal, and the hat signal went up. When the hat signal went up, all of a sudden, here come the Black Avengers. The Black Avengers came, and you know what happened. You saw Black man who was swimming across the Montgomery River. Not just Black man, but then you had Chairman. Chairman said, I am the chairman of the board, and I'm adding a new line to the song by James Weldon Johnson, lift every chair and swing. And y'all, he began to swing the chair, and we got hyped. I mean, Black Twitter blew up. Why? Because we got excited that Black folk fought back. I'm done. I'm coming. I'm done. We fought back. And that's all I'm trying to say. In 2024, it's time to fight back. It's time to stand up, organize our vote, educate our community. It's time to fight back and recognize you don't just vote November 5th. You've got to have an agenda on November 6th. It's time to fight back. And when we fight back, we'll elect people who do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with their God. When when we fight back, justice will roll down like waters, righteousness like an ever-flowing stream. Y'all, it's time to fight back, because when we fight back, justice occurs. When we fight back, liberation occurs. When we fight back, America will become what America has said she's always been. So y'all, let's fight back. And I promise you, if we fight back, it's going to be all right, because our ancestors said we shall overcome. Deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Y'all didn't feel them? Let me give you Kendrick Lamar. All's my life I had to fight, but if God's got us, we gonna be all right. Let's fight back.
Whoa. That's all I can say is whoa. I have the unenviable task of announcing proclamations, but what do you say after that? Let's give it up again for Elder Freddie Haynes. As they would say, the doors of the church are open. He's given us our call to action, and I would encourage everyone to take this inspiration with you when you go home. And protocol has it I am to acknowledge a few people, and then I'm going to get another minister up here, because I'm not a minister, and with this energy, I don't want to let y'all down as y'all go home. So let me first start by acknowledging Solomon Temple Security. Thank you for your service today, along with the Houston Police Department. The Congressman wants me to acknowledge that we have proclamations and special recognitions from State Senator Boris Miles, Fort Bend County Judge K.P. George, Fort Bend County District Attorney Brian Middleton, Fort Bend County Commissioner Dexter McCoy, Harris County Commissioner Rodney Ellis, City of Houston Mayor John Whitmire, City of Houston Council Member Willie Davis, and Missouri City Mayor Robin Ellicat. At this time, again, it's hot up here, I'm going to bring another minister up to do benediction. And again, I'm glad that you all came. Again, let us govern ourselves. Let's take this feel good. Let's take this zeal and this energy into action. So at this time, I'm going to have Minister Yuri Solomon to come and dismiss us and give us benediction. Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you.
If you would take a moment to stand right where you are as we pronounce the Lord's benediction upon this program. I certainly want to appreciate the Honorable Congressman Al Green and this necessary, needful, and indeed I say essential program today, and certainly the powerful, prolific orator in the person of Dr. Freddie Haynes. Acknowledge my own President Max A. Miller at this time. Let me pronounce the Lord's benediction. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up the light of his countenance and give you peace. And they said, Amen.